Dative, integrative and preventive healthcare. The content discussed in this episode is for informative purposes only
and should not be replaced by individualized professional consultations or professional medical advice.
Hey guys, I'm Tasha.
Hey listeners, this is Guni, and we're here to discuss lifestyle medicine.
You know, Guni, for the longest time, I always thought like expressing myself was something that came very easy for me and that I was natural. But then I went into like a relationship and everything came crumbling down very quickly. And I was like, wait, what? Like, why am I struggling to just say something as basic as like how I feel in this moment? I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
I get you. I mean, it's the same for me. And I think I'm not too bad in the professional setting. I think I'm able to communicate how I feel about something and how to get things across. I can come across as clear and yet, kind of human in the sense that I don't shy away from showing if I'm happy, angry, or this is and expressing what I want for myself. But when it comes to um romantic relationships, hey, I really feel I'm mentally challenged when it comes really like
This is a
it's
very strong
scary.
word.
I know, like I'm telling you, like recently I've been having to, like, I was exposed to that challenge of mine, and I when you retrospectively think about like how that conversation went, you're thinking, yo, this needs work. This isn't cannot be all the time like this difficult.
Yeah. Like, I recall this story when I was dating this guy. I'm not going to name his name a few years ago, but Goody knows who it is. But we were out
Unfortunately,
for
I do.
we were out for dinner, and yeah, I just like sit to him or sit like right next to me. We were at like a long table, and immediately was just like, no, we don't have to always be close to each other, even though we're dating. And like my heart was just crumbling inside, and when the food came, I could barely eat. I didn't finish my meal. This was so hurtful. How can I express myself, because I felt rejected, like misunderstood, but I couldn't express it. And I thought, like, what am I doing with this guy? Like, I can't even say something so basic as like, don't make me feel that way. I was just afraid that he was gonna break up with me or say like, you know what, this is not working, we're ending it now. um it's such a weird place to be.
Yeah, I get you. The emotional bits, especially tearing up, getting emotional. Oh my God. I think romantic relationships always test me in terms of how to express myself. And I feel it requires a lot of effort for me, like so much effort that I think that it's very disproportionate to the other sides of my life. Um, and this kind of brings us to why we also selected a guest, the guest we have today, because her journey tells us that learning to express ourselves doesn't come in one way and is also a journey of trial and error.
Spot on. Yeah. And so we have today Vaishali Patel. She's a proven expert in helping people transform their inner world to discover who they truly are and own their voice. She's a TEDx speaker who gave a talk recently on using creative expression to become self aware and to heal through the body. Vaishali is also a certified life coach, NLP practitioner, Reiki master, and has nearly 2 decades of leadership experience in corporate marketing and communications. Vaishali is also publishing a book on empowering women to solo travel. I guess you can tell us when that would be, but so we're excited to have Vaishali to I guess help us learn about expressing ourselves and that journey to getting to where she is today. Welcome, Vaishali, to Datif the podcast. Thank you for being
Oh,
here.
thank you, Tasha, and thank you, Guni, for having me on.
Yeah, we're so excited to like unpack this because we have been talking about this challenges with expressing ourselves for a while now.
Tell me about it. So welcome, Vaishali. As you caught our chat earlier, for the longest time we've been struggling with, I think the word is vulnerability, right? Which are often surrounded by having to express what's going on, and having and letting people know, or letting that special person know, can be really difficult. And yes, we're evolving, we're trying to learn on how to do that. But what, as you were hearing that, what comes up for you? What do you relate?
I do relate, yes. It's similar to what you were sharing before, Gini. I find it easier to communicate my thoughts and feelings in a professional setting, um, in a work setting. But when it comes to my nearest and dearest relationships, where I have to be really vulnerable, let the guards down, um, it is harder to be vulnerable and express my feelings. And I think it boils down to, one, vulnerability occurring as being weak rather than there being a sense of strength in being open and expressing our feelings. Also, when you're younger, uh, did your environment, your family, your friends, what were they like in expressing their feelings? And when you expressed, were you encouraged to express yours or not as well? That plays such a big factor. Um, so I I didn't even realize that I was struggling with expressing my feelings until I'd say probably my 30s, when uh, I think when I realized that uh, through doing expressive arts, things like dancing and acting, that things didn't flow easily. So if I was dancing with a partner when doing salsa, and the the movement felt stifled, like there's a tug of war of who's leading the dance or something like that.
Yeah.
And then dancing with someone, say, who's slightly older, and there being complete flow in the movement of being able to just let go and float like a butterfly.
Mm.
And it made me question, why is it that with this person, I'm feeling like I'm having a tug of war, whereas with this other person, I feel so free. And, as I questioned, I realized that I didn't feel fully safe to let go of control. And uh, that made me do some research and question and talk to people and come to understand that these sort of dances require a level of intimacy and safety between two people to create a beautiful flow of movement. And so I could then go and see and speak to someone and do some healing work around letting go of control. And through um, acting, I did improvisation theatre for about 3 years. And here you go on stage and you just create a character in the moment and a scene in the moment. And it didn't matter whether I started a scene or somebody else started a scene. I would always end up expressing this aggression or this aggressive character. And it was so interesting because anyone who knew me would say, "Oh, she's such a nice person. She's so safe and easy to be with." Yet on stage, I was this aggressive character. And so again, I started to question why. And as I did my research and as I spoke to people, and I was doing some self-development work as well at the time, I realized that there's something called repressed anger and
Mm.
suppressed anger. And this occurs, like, for example, in childhood, where we weren't allowed to express our anger. It was either you were told to be quiet, or expressing anger is a bad thing, or like me, I grew up with a religious upbringing, and I was reading the scriptures every day. And the scripture said, these traits are bad, like anger, jealousy, all of this is bad. And being like right, being right and loving, and this is good. So naturally, I shut down these
Mm,
feelings so I could be the good girl, right?
yeah.
And what happens is later on in life, I didn't even know I had anger. I didn't know I had it. I was numb. You could I didn't have much feelings, not much emotions. And it was only in my, I'd say more so in my 30s, I felt it, and I could go, oh, this is why I communicate passive aggressively, because there's this anger that I can't let out. So I'll do it indirectly with digs and, snidey remarks and things like that. That's all, not being able to communicate emotions that are suppressed. Um, and it was such a long time. Like, the more we suppress the emotions and we go through trauma and stuff, we become numb. We numb ourselves. And yeah.
Um, Before we like go deeper, I was just thinking like your gateway into it was basically like your, I guess, the classes, the dance classes and improv classes where you recognize like the controlling part of you that was like not ready to let go, and then also the angry side of you. But what specifically in that like moment, like that made you think, oh crap, I need to like look into this, like this might be an issue that's happening, and that's why I'm like struggling to express myself in general, you know? Was there something particular that happened or triggered that? Was it an
uh,
accumulation of things?
I think it was an accumulation of experiencing in the body,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, through the dance, like the same feeling, and watching other people and seeing them flow and this beautiful dance. And I'm thinking, why can't I move like this? And I had
Mm.
this one guy that was trying to push my hip down. And I'm like, hey guy, and my hip doesn't go more than that. Like, what are you
Right.
doing? Right.
Yeah.
But it was this desire to move my body like a woman, like one water, and not feeling like I'm doing that, that made me question and the observation, and then the desire to be a certain way, to move my body a certain way, not being able to do that. And then uh, the other person telling me, hey, I'm the guy, let me lead. You just follow. And I was thinking, what's follow? What do you mean follow?
You
What?
know,
Like,
even when I first learned dancing, this was a thing I was told a couple of times. I'm not exaggerating, but I am following. What do you mean? You're not a good leader, because when I dance with the teacher, I'm able to follow perfectly fine.
yeah,
So it seems to be a a you problem.
yeah, totally. We put the blame out there, but a lot of the times we have to look at how we're causing that. And I think that the reason why I mentioned dance a lot, because uh, like 93% of communication is nonverbal. Not body's always talking. And
So true.
so if you're feeling stuck in the body, most likely you're going to feel stuck in expressing it out there. Um, a lot of the times when we go, through trauma and stuff, it's stuck in our throat, but also in our sacral, just underneath our belly button. And those two spots are can get quite blocked in energy, and it can impact one movement and impact voice. And so the dance was showing me that I was impacted in movement. Um, and when I did improvisation theater, it was just constantly like, I again wanted to communicate different accents and try different characters, but naturally I kept being the aggressive character. So I was thinking, why do I keep being the aggressive character? And it's just observation, curiosity. And then I realized, oh, okay, I have this thing. And I always see um, things like creative art, dance, drama, music, writing, travel as reflective exercises. I see like them reflecting back to me who I am, and what there is to explore. So
Yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying with regards to those different outlets in which provides you the opportunity to test these out, right? Like letting go. Um, I recently had like this reflection about dancing and music, and how music can just, travel in you and make you move a certain way. Like, I don't know the science behind this, but I find it so interesting how there's no words to it, and you just are going to flow. And that's like a definition of letting go and letting whatever is out there, I'll go through you and let it express itself. And I also really relate to the part where you were saying when you're dancing. And so for me, dancing alone is bliss. I love
Amen.
it.
Yeah.
But when somebody comes in, there is, and I need to follow or I need to be guided, then it becomes difficult. And I don't even realize I'm trying to lead when this person is actually trying to lead. And so I don't, well, maybe I can't relate or I'm not yet there. Maybe it's the anger part, because I feel maybe this is just linked to our personality, the way we are at, like the way we are as a person. The anger, though, where I do see like your home being a reflection of how you've been, brought up, how these elements of speaking up have been brought up, and you being encouraged to speak up and to express yourself. That I've seen. I mean, South Asian households in general is not really, especially if you're a woman, is not really like encouraged or very conducive for that. And usually it ends up saying, "Oh, she's a drama queen. There she goes
Sensitive.
again." Sensitive. That sounded very, very close to
Personal.
your
I
heart.
hate that word. Like, what do you mean by that? I
Yeah.
have feelings?
And then there's for me the generational trauma, because the thing is, I've not seen my mom being able to express herself in that way. I've not seen, even less, my grandmother being able to express herself that way. So it's like just us, perpetuating what we've seen. But now we're in a better place to be able to change that. But I do see passive aggressiveness within the South Asian community for women being passed over. There's something I can see, like, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Um, Definitely. So here's my take on stuff. Like, I feel that our parents and ancestors, um, these ladies grew up in a time where there was so many tough challenges, and their voice was literally quite taken away from them. They didn't have always, most of them didn't have a sense of choice. They were, before they could even fully develop their personalities, they were married at 13, 14, and they
Yeah.
become
Mhm.
baby producing, housekeeping kind of personality. So everything gets numbed down. You have a culture or a community that tells you what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable behavior. And if you have a desire to be loved and belong, you're always going to do the thing that is acceptable to belong and to get that love. And if you try to be yourself, you don't even get a space to discover who you are, because you're already conditioned to be whatever the community or at the time society tells you who you're supposed to be as a woman. So they grew up in all of that, and they'll get suppressed. So they are, so emotions, I think the narrative was always like, be strong, or, like, put that away, or whatever. So I don't know if those were really allowed to be nurtured, and there was any value seen in emotions. Um, and I think when it comes to our generation, there is this thing about us women needing to be strong. So even when you're young, don't cry. And then there's this comparison with boys. Like, boys
Yeah.
are valued more than girls. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so then naturally we want to be more like a boy, right? Because then we think, oh, we
Yeah.
might get more affection, more, we'll get seen, well, but I don't know if that always happens. So you have this environment you're growing up with, and you're also compared to boys, and then you're going through the work environment, which is very masculine energy led. It's very much about
Yeah.
taking actions
Mm-hmm.
and uh, work, which is a lot of masculine energy. Um, so we're brought up in this way, and the feelings just keep getting suppressed. We're not allowed to speak up. Sometimes, if you're in a household and it's like, and you're a woman, you're not allowed to have a voice. So then your voice gets suppressed, your emotions get suppressed. But sometimes you're in situations and it comes out in the only way you can, which is passive aggressive at the time. Um, so, um, sometimes even I communicate passive aggressively now in my personal relationships, because I find it really hard to, having been numb for quite a long time, to know what it is that is, sometimes I don't know what is upsetting me. And when it comes out passive aggressively, I can go, wow, okay, what's going on here? Or someone says you're being passive aggressive, like, yeah, I am. Okay, what's really going on here? What is it that I really need to communicate here? You know, is it that I'm feeling envy? Is it that I'm feeling a need is not met and I don't know how to ask for that need to be met? Um, do I feel frustrated? Am I feeling helpless? What is going on here? But I feel that it is quite strong in communities where women have been suppressed and not allowed to use their voices.
Yeah, and I think it's a culture where emotions, as you said in the beginning, where emotion is seen as having emotion or expressing emotions is seen as weak. And then just the exploration of being able to identify an emotion is not something that they know how to do. So of course, when we come to this time where you're in a relationship and you have to express yourself, it's like, wait, it's like I've never been asked, how do you feel about this? This is something that my parents never thought about. They never asked me that question.
It's based on what you said. It's not even your parents asking you. It's, are they even asking each other? Because
Yeah.
we watch them and we emulate that, right? So if they're not expressing emotion to each other and not even
Mm,
asking, then not even going to ask us, then
mm,
it's not something we think about in a relationship, especially if the other person is a different personality type. For example,
that's true. Mm,
Tasha, Tasha and me in a relationship, she's sensitive, um, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in a beautiful way. Like, you're vulnerable, you're sensitive, emotional. For me, I'm like, that's like scary, like overwhelming. For someone that doesn't hasn't dealt with their own emotions or been numb, just discovering the world of emotions. For example, before my 30s, I probably just had sad and happy, because it
that
was
sounds
like,
about right.
right. And then it's like, I'm doing Aikido martial arts and I'm got a stomach ache and I'm thinking, oh, I got a stomach ache. I can't do this exercise. And my Aikido teacher says, oh, you got anxiety. Oh, that's what that is. And then every day, every time I feel it, I'm going like a little child who learns a new word. Oh, that's anxiety. Oh, I've got anxiety, learning these different words for like, that's disappointment, and that's sadness, and that's anger, and that's just, like I'm just, what's the word? Being, when you reflect on the past and feeling quite emotional. And it's just discovering this world of emotions to be able to articulate that to a person. But so going back to what I said, if your partner is somebody who is different from you as well, that opens up a whole new, space. Yeah.
Yeah, sets of challenges. To a bit more pessimistic, but yeah, it's you get to learn about your partner, of how they deal with emotions and the work they've done on their own with regards to expressing themselves. And then you combine this to your own journey in expressing yourself and being okay to quote seem weak, aka vulnerable. Um, and so that just whole entire how to say exchange can be really debilitating for me. And the hardest bit for me is when I see my eyes starts to water and I start crying. For me, the tears is the things that, like, I know it means a lot to me, but I hate the fact that I cry when it's an emotion, like it's sensitive subject that I care about. I really have difficulties accepting that I'm crying about this while I communicate. And I have not yet come to like an okay understanding about like, okay, it's fine if you're crying. That's still difficult because I'm like, oh my God, such a crybaby. Like, can't you get it together?
That is another way that our vulnerability is shut down. Whether you're, and it's worse when you're a boy,
Yeah.
because the masculinity, that sort
Mm,
of side of masculinity is not allowed. So then they like think they have to be hard, but nobody wants to be with a hard nut. We all love a man who's sensitive and listens, and so that word crybaby is another way that our vulnerability is shut down. And when that is shut down, it doesn't leave doors to be open and explore. Why am I feeling like, why am I crying? What is at the source of this? Oh, it's wrong to cry. Oh, it's weak to cry. That's when we start making meanings out of it, when we're called crybaby as a kid. Now, when we're an adult, that voice is still other people's that we're carrying in our head, saying it to our own selves. So, Guni, when you're feeling emotional, you almost have to parent yourself, and you have to be the type of parent. Sometimes I hear my mum's voice or my aunt's voice in my head, and I'm going, oh, I don't want to be like that kind of parent. I'm going to be the kind of parent that I needed. And so when I initially started to feel my emotions, I had to tell myself it's okay, to allow myself to feel it, and to have this thing called self-compassion, self-love, self-care, and allowing yourself to feel those emotions, and realizing our own self when we're judging our own self for having emotions.
yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And
Yeah.
to be honest, what's helping right now is that the receiving end is creating an environment in which you're not judged for crying. Because I remember having my dad saying, we can have this conversation, but why are you crying about it? Like, stop crying about it and let's have a conversation. So very, very masculine, hard. But then I would be like, okay. I would I act like a boy and try to like gather my courage together and stop crying, and it would be like, and still stop, continue crying and talking. But when you're with someone who understands that you're being vulnerable and that those tears are a sign of something, but nothing to be bashed on, then you're like, okay, at least I'm not being judged or I'm not being seen as weak. And they welcome that. Then you can practice self-compassion. At least that's how it has been right now. Like still to this day for me, I'm so hard on myself. And I was like, no, you need to get it together. It's like, stop crying, stop, and I feel guilty if I do end up crying. But this time around, when there's somebody who's receiving you and saying, okay, yeah, let's continue. What's going on? And not addressing the tears. That's like a big thing. Not addressing why are you crying is like, okay, so it's a signal. The tears means that you care about this, but let's go more into why you care about this instead of why are you crying.
Yeah. I remember like as a kid where I had those times where someone told me, stop being so sensitive about it, or stop being such a girl. You're always crying about every other thing. And I could remember my body like having this heat and like my throat closing up. And then I'm just feeling this helplessness. And I just kind of step away and have to go be by myself and know that like, okay, I can't talk to these people about it. And that same feeling has presented itself in my life as an adult, and it's so layered. You have to have like the language to actually express, okay, this is actually what I feel, and it's not even that big of a deal, but I just need the emotion to come out, right? Yeah, it's just like the point that you said about how we try to be guys. I didn't realize until this conversation right now that, have I been trying to be a guy this whole time? Because even when my dad was in hospital last year, only to Guni and like another best friend, I was able to cry to them. But in front of my family, stoic. I got this. I'm good. And then if I was really like overwhelmed, I'll step out, cry, and then come back in. Never shed a tear in front of them. But I think about that. I'm like, why am I even doing this? Why can't I just express it? It's normal to feel this way. It's overwhelming.
You said something like it's not even a big deal, and that's what we tell ourselves. And we don't embrace our emotions then, but they
Yeah.
are a big deal. They're our emotions, and they tell us something about what's important to us. And going back to uh, you as a child were told you're sensitive, why are you crying? You would have gone away, as you said, step to the side and made it mean something about you being that way. Either
Right.
I'm not acceptable, I'm not understood, I'm not loved, I have to be a certain way to be loved and understood. And so that part of you, that beautiful part of us as women, as humans, is shut down. And we start to believe that we have to be the counter of that to get accepted, to get loved, to
Right.
belong, to fit in, right? And that stays with us till adulthood until we go lean into that and go, what did I make it mean? That it's wrong for me to express my thoughts, feelings, and emotions with my family or just generally because I won't be accepted or loved or whatever. And then, is that true? No, that was just something that was said to me before by people who themselves probably haven't dealt with their own emotions and feel overwhelmed with other people's emotions. And they then projected that onto us. And we have then created our identity from that. So, I remember when I was coaching someone years ago, and so this
Yeah.
one lady I had, she kept crying all the time. And I was like, what do I do with this woman? Like, she keeps crying. I don't understand why she keeps crying. Like, okay, this person said something. Go tell them. Why do you have to cry about it? It was so, and slowly, I just felt so uncomfortable because I couldn't be comfortable crying myself. And the more I sort of felt like, okay, I just need to hold her space. I just need to give her space to let her cry. The more I got comfortable with my own self crying, I could be okay with her crying and holding her space and understanding that that's just her one natural way to communicate. But also, secondly, it's so vulnerable and beautiful and things like that.
So we're talking about emotions and us getting, quickly, like not being recognized with this emotion and being bashed down. But then there's also, this term called like snowflake. You're a snowflake. So people who are easily offended by someone's actions, or even if it's a joke. So we are now stepping into a society that is more embracing of emotions, but there's this underlying kind of residual past where we like, oh, we're so sensitive with that. Where do we draw the line between acknowledging that there's an emotion and staying in that emotion and
Mm,
that empowering, productivity or just moving forward or healing even?
that's a really good question because I think, when I started my journey into my emotions, I would stay in them for a long time. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And I didn't know the healthy way to feel them and move on. I didn't even know I could. I thought I'm just stuck here. And,
Mm.
and I was coached on, look, when an emotion comes up, feel it. First of all, feel it, lean into it. Take one day, take 2 days, take a week, but feel it. What we see some people do these days is they're too scared to feel their emotion because they may never have felt it before. And it's something new, it's overwhelming, they're scared, they don't know. And so they'll go you know, to distract themselves. So either they'll throw themselves into work or they'll scroll endlessly on their social media or watch TV or they'll distract themselves. But the idea is lean into it, feel it. If you feel jealous about something, someone, feel it. If you feel sad because someone's rejected you or you didn't get the promotion, feel it, embrace the uncomfortableness. But the other thing as part of that process that I've seen from other people that I've coached is they're too afraid to even scream and shout and go and swear. It's like, oh, I can't be bad. So yeah, I do feel this, but that's it. Like, no,
That's very
when I,
English. Let's be honest. That's very English.
That's quite
it's
English.
very, yeah,
English.
but I'm just, yeah. And very much I'm like, okay, you're going to scream and shout. You're going to swear. I want you to say the worst things possible. So
Yeah.
I work with them to get that out. And then you need to go, okay, you come to a point where you actually feel at peace with yourself. And that's when you know, okay, I can let this emotion go now. I can create something else. What do I want to feel? How do I move forward? And when you meditate or reflect on this, there's usually something that comes through for you after you felt the emotion, either some insight, or you can ask yourself, like, hey, what can I do about this? So I have just felt this jealousy, or I have just felt this sadness from rejection. What can I learn from this? What is this telling me about me? And then you can act on it. Now, sometimes we can feel these emotions while, say, we're a high performer and we're working, and it's like, oh my God, this emotion is coming up. I can't focus. I'm feeling like anxiety. I can't focus.
Yeah.
So it's really, you can do a couple of things. If you are able to compartmentalize it and go, okay, I will come back to this feeling at the end of the day or on the weekend, but I will definitely come back to it to experience it, journal it, meditate, see what it is. Or you go, right, okay, I'm going to take an hour out of my day and I'm going to meditate on it. I'm going to journal about it. I'll speak to somebody about it just to help me process what I need to then be able to get on with what I need to do. But the idea is, um, firstly, don't stay in the emotion, feel it, and then look at what the learning is and move on.
Yeah, I love that, Ken. It's also kind of what has been taught by these meditation coach or even spiritual leaders, which is not bashing the emotion, but they say observe it. And your word is feel it. And then it shall pass. It shall pass, because there's ups and downs, and knowing that shall pass is that comforting aspect of it.
Mm. And it only passes when you allow yourself to feel it. And the feel it part is the observation part of it as well, right? You're observing that I have a feeling of anger. I have this feeling of, not I am, but I have,
Yeah.
right? So I have this feeling of anger. I have this feeling of jealousy. I have this feeling of loneliness. Okay, feel it, then it will pass. But if you feel it and avoid it, all you're constantly getting is avoidance.
It's powerful, yeah. Um, and the simple practices like journaling. For me, when I had my breakup, middle of the workday, I wouldn't be able to start working. So I would literally journal, take that 15 minutes because I needed to be out. And that helped me so much. And that practice for like 6 months was the only way I got through to the other side and was like, oh, I need to do this actually all the time. And then it became a habit. So I didn't have to always do it every day. It started being like a weekly thing, but it's a habit
And
that you
you
have to form.
and the more you do it, you start to build a muscle to express authentically what's there for you rather than coming from a passive aggressive place. And even now, sometimes when I am passive aggressive with my partner and he says, you're being passive aggressive, I'm like, I know. I know I'm being
Yeah,
passive
it
aggressive,
takes away
you
the
know?
fear of it, right? Like, I think part of it, like part of the process of feeling your emotions is that you are aware and you know the different categories of emotions. And so when people have said to me like, you do Aikido, I do like jujitsu, and I've actually cried in the middle of a role because it was just so overwhelming, and I'm like, I'm helpless. I don't know how to get out of this situation. And some people say like, oh, very sensitive, huh? But they don't know me, so they're like, they don't mean it with malice or anything. But I'm like, yeah, I am quite sensitive, or like I felt really overwhelmed. I felt trapped. So it's okay. Like, but I didn't carry that with me for like weeks on.
And the power in that, Sasha, is when we can accept our own emotions, we become a safe space for other people to be with their emotions. And that's what's really great about when we do the work on ourselves and we can accept our own emotions, we can accept where we are with our own emotions. Even for me to say, yeah, I am being passive aggressive. And then he'll say, okay, what's really going on? What is it that you're really trying to say? And then I'm like, okay, this is what I'm trying to say. Or I say something like, I'm really uncomfortable telling you this, but right now I feel insecure, or I feel anxious, or I feel this, but I feel really uncomfortable telling you this because I feel like really vulnerable and weak or exposed. So you can even out yourself, but you have to choose wisely who you share with, because you really want to talk to people who are safe about stuff like this. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it also comes, so we talked about these different tools, right? Like meditation, um, journaling. But then, so if you're in one environment that you know, and you know these people, and you feel, trusting of them, so you start that unfolding and that unpacking of what you've like been conditioned. But then I think the real test is when you start changing environment where you don't have control anymore. And that could be in traveling, it could be starting a new job, meeting new people, having to dance with a partner you've never danced. And that, I think, is where you're tested. And that's where the art of letting go, or how good you are at that art, um, is tested.
I'm going to challenge you there because it depends on your personality type. So for me, being in new environments where I don't know people, I find it easy to communicate. I find it easier to flourish because I don't know them. My personality type is one where I feel easy with people I don't know, but people who I feel close to because of past experiences, I don't feel comfortable with. But then there are people who have a certain personality type that with the people they are very close to, like a family, community, they feel so safe to be themselves. But like you said, when they're in new environments, they're a little like, like, is it safe to say how I feel? Is it safe to fully trust and be led by this person? I think so. I do think it is personality, uh, one, personality driven, and two, when you are in situations, new environments, it is, I think it's again bringing the power of awareness and discernment. Really, it's just being observant of, okay, how do I feel with this person? If you're dancing, a lot of it is how does my body feel with this person? I need to tell them, look, my hip doesn't go as far as that. Stop pushing me, or like being able to communicate what your boundaries are when you're dancing and stuff like that with new people, and trial and error. Just give that a go when you're starting a new job and things like that. I think the fear is being judged in a new environment. Always want to be your best and be seen as your best and be seen as credible and things like that. So I would say in that environment, be discerning, be aware, but also don't be afraid to take like little risks and trial and error it, and don't be afraid to make uh, mistakes. I'm saying mistakes in quotation marks and things like that because it's all part of the process of pushing your boundary and going beyond limitations.
Yeah, agreed. Because I think I'm the personality type that have no issues in new environment because I've been exposed mostly on new environments, and I'm like, I thrive in them. But it's also, I don't know how to express this or how to formulate this, but in these new environments, I'm with people that I do not care if they like me or not. I'm going to be my authentic self. And this is where, my bullshit filters like is there, it has been set because I've done the work. Maybe that's why I feel that way. But and so it's so I know if I want to go in depth or not, to what extent I want to go, and so it's controlled. Do you see what I mean? Like the exchange is controlled because I know exactly how much I want you to know. So it's like, this is how much I care about you, not that much. So I'm not going to go into depth with you, or I will go to a certain extent. So it's everything controlled. But I do agree that it's a personality thing. Everyone, according to their life experience as well, will act differently in a new environment, and the vulnerability bit might be expressed differently.
But
Vaishali,
I
go ahead.
think it's what you said, Guni, there is important because you can't just open yourself and communicate openly to everyone. So having those boundaries in the work environment or other environments is so important. Like I remember I used to just tell people. I was like an open book. I would just, I was so innocent and naive, and I would just tell people stuff and things like that. And you don't know who's got your best interests at heart and who hasn't, and things like that. So it is important to have boundaries in place with who you say what to. For and that doesn't mean that you're not an express person. It just means you're a smart express person. So yeah.
Just to echo what you're saying, the environment factor is huge. And similar to Guni, where like I've been exposed to a lot of new environments. So it's easy for me to, in a social setting or in a new environment, to just be whoever I want to be. And that's another thing about it as well. Like that maybe I have an understanding that like I could create whatever image that I need to create so that this environment embraces me the way that I need them to. And so I can allow for that to happen, right?
Just in line with what you're saying, it's like you communicate based on your accountability. So if you're in a new environment, starting a new job as the CEO of a company, your communication, how you express yourself, is aligned to your accountability as a CEO. If you start talking like you're a nursery school teacher, it's not gonna be aligned right. So
Yeah.
in these new environments, whatever your expression is going to be aligned with your title and your accountability and what's expected of someone in that accountability. But you can also bring who you are, your essence to that. So I'm naturally a playful kind of person. And so even in my professional settings, I do like to have a little bit of a banter, and I bring humor into my accountability. So my essence, my personality comes through, but I have to be mindful about how I communicate.
I guess your personality type is a big factor, and the environment itself, like how people around you behave, really either encourages you or discourages you to be more of something or less of something, and feeling, I guess, free or liberated to like express yourself.
We can be impacted by the environment. Like we can choose an environment that empowers our expression by the people around us being open. But also, when you are driven by a strong purpose, like a desire to help, that drive will empower your voice to come through. So your strong sense of purpose as well will have you even work with people you don't like in a way that is powerful because you are inside of a purpose or working for a project. So who you are impacts your voice. You can allow the environment to impact you, or you can impact the environment based on what your motivation or your drivers are as well.
No, and I think it goes back to the concept of knowing yourself, having a strong sense of self and understanding, you know, what are your triggers, what are your limitation, and listening to those messages, your body, you mentioned body, but also how you speak and the solutions that are out there. One could hear this conversation and would say these women need therapy, or they need to go and see someone. But the thing I feel
We all do need therapy, regardless. Like,
but the thing is that talking therapy, I agree,
yeah,
therapy is first step into healing. But talking therapy sometimes, for me, at least for me, doesn't work. My personality type, at least, because I like to go into solutions, and because then I get restless and I'm like, oh, this is a waste of my time. And I feel this is my masculine side with regards to that, because a lot of men can relate to that.
So can I.
And so, there's like verbal therapy where you talk about it and you can, get into understanding more about yourself. But there's non-verbal ways to go about it, non-verbal therapies. Of course, there's the traditional, like how some people would say, a bit more woo-woo and energies, and it could be
Reiki,
what is
sound
the one?
healing.
Yes, there's also one that I did, hypnotherapy.
Mind you, hypnotherapy is not woo-woo because it's actually a modality under like a proper scheme of psychology. It is actually accredited.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not.
Well, it worked for me. And so I just wanted to explore those different
Sure.
avenues to which you can kind of explore your own voice and understand yourself in a non-traditional way where you're like, oh, okay, you just go and see a therapist, because that could be very expensive.
Yeah.
And you need to find the right therapist for you, because that's also another whole I think quest.
I talk about this in my TEDx talk, that I don't think that talk-based therapies are an ideal initial solution for everyone. You know, for me, it didn't work because like you, talked around. I was numb. So there was no way, even for a year, I was getting to my emotions. I was just talking around the subject, around. I called it the black box. And we never go there. We never opened the black box. So it didn't help. It was nice. I didn't feel lonely. I had somebody to talk to, but it didn't help. What helped me was doing things, being active that reflected back to me things that I wanted and I wasn't having. So, for example, solo travel. I went traveling. And when I went by myself, what was so great about that is that I had no identity. You know, I was not limited by being a daughter, an aunt, or something like that. I could just be whoever I wanted to be.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience, and I think that contributed so much into that self-learning. You're in a new country, nobody knows you, so you don't carry any baggage. You're as you said, you're not the daughter of so and so, so no, the community that comes with your parents is not there as well. So the judgment or the pressure and the societal, pressure
Mm.
that you had back home is not the same. So
And
I I feel I started to being my true self once I stepped out of that.
yeah, totally. And one example of that is, Tasha, if you're in an environment where people are calling you a crybaby and like stop being sensitive,
Hmm.
you go on a solo travel and you go to another country and somebody sees you get uh sensitive or cry or something, and they'll come up to you and they might say, oh, Tasha, you're so emotional, it's so lovely that you get
Mm,
moved by this. So you get created by somebody else in a totally different way that creates a new identity for you.
mm,
So, that's the power of like being in new environments, new countries, new cultures, new experiences, is that people you start to see yourself through other people's eyes, and other people will see you in ways that or your familiar environment doesn't see you. And you also, so I went trekking in China by myself, and the tour guide went, "Oh my God, you're so brave." And I was like, "What?" Like, I'm brave? He's like, "Yeah, you go off by yourself and you're a woman." And I thought, I never thought of myself as brave. I'm brave, like I created
mm.
this construction for myself based on somebody else's positive um, reflection of me. So I think solo travel is one way that you can learn about yourself, but also putting yourself in new environments. It may feel safer to communicate and to articulate and express yourself as well. And then I did things like dance, as I mentioned. I did drama. I drew. I did art. I wrote creative stories. These are all ways to express ourselves, to explore boundaries about ourselves in a safe way. And I say safe because, like you don't have to show your art or your journal to anybody. And
Right.
when you're dancing or you're acting, all the stuff that comes up is you're aware of it, and then you can take it away with you and go, like I did. Why am I like this? Why am I doing this? Why did that person respond like this? Why can't I move like that? Why can't I communicate? An example, during lockdown after my TEDx talk, there was in Dominica, the Ministry of Gender Affairs reached out to me because they wanted to uh, create an alternative way to empower women of the island. Now, these women had they go through domestic violence, and then they stay with their partners because of financial dependence.
Mm,
So they wanted to look, rather than talk-based therapies, they wanted to find an alternative way to encourage them to step into entrepreneurship so that
mm,
they could then build financial independence and leave those environments.
Right.
So there is some very powerful ways creative arts can help. There's also all these other things that have opened up now, like adventure therapy. Trying new things like surfing for the first time.
Yeah, surfing. Oh my goodness. I've learned so much about myself of how I reacted to it. I get frustrated very quickly. My temper goes up very quickly. I become hopeless and I'm just like, oh my goodness. And then I want to give up, but then my ego kicks in and you're like, okay, you can do this. Like, if these people can do it, you can do it too. So there's like this all internal chatter as you're doing something that is completely new and where you have zero control, and how you go out, like how you deal with this is very telling. And it teaches you a lot about yourself.
I think any activity that basically forces you to learn something new, right? It's kind of the trademark of like the process. You have to feel uncomfortable, and then you like
Mm.
I guess learn about yourself in the process, and learn through other people about how they learn, and then that you feel empowered, by that process. And to the point you were saying about creative arts, Vaishali, even like earlier this year, I was kind of feeling stuck and in a rut. And I looked up this like voice acting kind of workshop, and I thought it was going to be like very acting related, but the whole workshop was just about understanding how our voice works. And a lot of the activities were just very much breathing, mindful activity exercises, and I didn't even think it was going to be that effective. But at the end of that workshop, I felt so rejuvenated. Like, and I didn't understand how impactful that was until like days later. And that creative aspect of it is such a big element that we keep forgetting or dismissing. So yeah, I completely like second and third and fourth, whatever you suggest in terms of nonverbal therapy as a gateway to like start your exploration process to your
Yeah.
emotions.
I think, you know, the question Guni asked was, how can you get started, especially if, because therapy can cost a lot of money. I would say, first of all, you have to choose it. You have to want to see the world as a reflection of who you are. You have to want to see it that way and choose it that way. And, it takes a lot of courage because you have to be willing to uh, look at yourself and accept um, some of the reasons why you do things or why you don't do things. And they may not be fully acceptable to other people. They might. And it's hard. So choosing to do that journey, and it's rewarding when you do, but you have to choose it. Then there are things you can do like journaling every day, wake up, do 3 A4 sides nonstop. It's a good way of putting your thoughts down. But everything is a build up. Start small and then build up. Like if you can only write 1 page, that's okay. Write 1 page, then build up to 3 pages. But just get everything out of your head. You can meditate. And if you're new to meditation, you can do on YouTube, on these apps, you can do guided meditation or you could do non-guided meditation. You can do breath work. Breath work is so big in terms of helping us deal with help me deal with anxiety. Um, then there's things from like cold showers to change your state to exercise, do yoga, running, whatever it is, movement helps to move energy in the body. And especially one thing tip with women, maybe men too, but if we suppress emotions, a lot of it gets stuck in our hips. So if we have tight hips, when we start to release the hips and do yoga stretches or movement that's specifically around the hips, we start to release a lot of emotions as well.
Oh, I think it's for men too, actually, when you think about it, because like they're bad at moving their hips the most, and they're really stiff. So I think that they
Not
need
South
it more than
American man
us.
for the most part.
That's
Yeah, not
true.
South American
True
men
thing.
or
Yeah.
Caribbean or Caribbean.
That's
Yeah,
true.
they all know how to dance. I'm like, they're living
Yeah,
life.
that's true. Yeah. And actually, okay, maybe I'm like my parallel is completely off, but when you think about it, they
Yes.
are really good at expressing themselves and being okay crying, okay, expressing their emotions. Like those Netflix shows, Love is Blind, if you compare the American one and the Brazilian one, it's like one side men are actually crying, and so the Brazilian side are crying and getting together, and whereas the American side is very like corporate-ish, very kind of stuck up. Sorry for that word, but so
And there is a link between those cultures and how they are in the bedroom. So when we talk about the hips,
okay.
like the Brazilian, South Americans, Caribbean, they are known to be good lovers. They are expressive. They are dancers. So it's all kind of interconnected when you look at it that way.
Love it. I think that if there was a survey, and I don't know if the survey is out there, but I think that it would kind of attest. I at least with my experience, I can attest to that.
Yeah, I agree.
With that smile, that cheeky smile, it's just it's too telling. But so yeah, to wrap up the conversation about this is, I think throughout our conversation, if I were to summarize it, is that when you like just the identification of something being, off, and you identifying this, that's the beginning of that healing process. And you choosing to heal and find these other those alternatives, options to go and explore, as Vaishali said, is courage. And I think that courage needs to be celebrated. And I think that's only that. Once you have that courage, wherever you go and whatever you discover along the way will be okay. You'll be fine. Once, for me, the courage is that key to unfolding all these, stopping generational trauma, stopping these, starting the healing process, is the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to say, okay, you know what, let's do this. I'm going to go through this. It's going to be painful. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I'll get there. And so I really wanted to thank you, Vaishali, for this conversation. So before we end, we'd like to ask you rapid fire questions.
Sure. Okay.
It's really just to get to know you. But yeah, we'll start with the first one as can you name a pivotal moment which shaped your understanding of why expressing yourself matters to you?
Oh God. Childhood, not speaking up, the agony and of keeping a secret, and the impact on one's confidence, self-worth, self-esteem, and ability to go for opportunities, all of it, how you show up in the world, all of that is a pivotal moment.
And what's one thing you would like to detach from?
Giving a shit what other people think.
Oh my God.
Amen. Another amen today. And the last one is there a lesson around emotional vulnerability that you keep having to relearn?
Yes. Don't be passive aggressive.
I love it. I need to tell my mom this.
I think it's like before you choose to communicate in that passive aggressive way, stop, listen to what's really going on, and then communicate that.
Yeah, fair point. Like that's the hard bit, right? That's the work that we all have to like work on.
And the funniest part for me in this, I relate to the passive aggressive thing, but it's also such an English thing, being passive aggressive for women. But then if you marry that to the brown South Indian side, you're just like, okay, it's the end. Passive aggressive on passive aggressive.
And then it's like you have to be passive aggressive in a polite way. Right?
Yeah,
You have to be
correct.
polite.
Yeah.
acceptable passive aggressiveness. What did you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great one. But thank you so much, Vaishali, for like giving us your insight and just speaking to us today. It was cool. It was really nice to explore this expression conversation.
Definitely. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and select that follow or subscribe button.
Till then, stay well.